Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Voices of Recovery. I'm your host, Michele Eich, and this is my book, How to Kill an Addiction Recovery with God. So that's available on Amazon. I'd love for you to check that out. And every week on the Voices of Recovery, I interview somebody who has overcome a life-controlling issue with God's help. And I'd like to bring up my guest today. Her name is Chekesha. Chekesha, welcome to the show.
Welcome, and thank you for having me. Good evening, everyone.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. You have an incredible story, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But could you introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Yes. So my name is Chekesha K. Ellis, and everyone knows me as Kay. And I'm an author of a book called A Life of Kayos. Chaos was my life.
Mm.
And I am also the founder of ChaseNoMore.org, which is an organization that provides bridges for people with an addiction to get recovery resources. And I have been doing this for quite some time before I even had a title of becoming a family recovery certified specialist, a family recovery certified specialist.
That's amazing.
Yes, so my words are kind of jumbled up, but guess what? It is what it is. But I'm here today. I'm so happy, Michele, for you to have me here. We had a divine connection, so let's jump in.
We did, girl, and we'll tell our audience a little bit about that here in a minute. But just share with the audience how long you've been clean, because, wow, congratulations on that.
Thank you. You know what? I didn't tell people my recovery. I've been in recovery today for 10 years, 4 months, and 26 days.
Fantastic.
Thank
Praise
you.
God. That is quite an accomplishment, and super proud of you, girl. Well, I read your book, A Life of Kayos, My Opioid Journey Through Hell, Hope, and Healing. And I sat down and I couldn't put it down. It's just so incredibly powerful. And I know you just released that. I know it was a new release in one area. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
And so such a powerful story. So let's go ahead and jump in and let our audience know kind of your background and where you came from and what happened to you. So it sounds like, Chekesha, that you had an amazing childhood. You grew up and your father was a pastor. Tell us a little bit about what life was like for you as a young girl.
So I am old school, and I was raised in the 70s and the 80s. So when people look at me, they automatically think that I'm like in my late 20s or early 30s. But I just turned 49
Wow.
in December. I just turned 49 December 20th.
Wow. Amazing.
And it's by God's grace and mercy that He preserved my gift of youth from what I went through.
Amen.
But I was raised in a wonderful home with my mom and my dad. Growing up in church, I was one of those little girls that was going to Sunday school. I mean, we had to get up early to get ready for Sunday school. We had to be at church before 9. So, I mean, I was sitting in the pews with baldies and barrettes in my hair. I was this cute little girl with glasses. And I was just like a little girl that I see a lot of kids, and we look at our children and we say, oh, they are so cute. And then I know a lot of parents look back when their kids overdose or they go through something with addiction, and they be like, I never seen that coming from that little cute boy or that little cute girl. So I was one of those kids that was raised in a great environment, Sunday school, chores. I had responsibilities. I got allowances. And that's something that we don't hear about now in this era. We don't hear about kids getting allowances and having to work for the things that they want. But I was that kid. I was that kid. I had a great upbringing in childhood.
I love that. I love the way you describe that in the book. So, Chekesha, you mentioned that when you were in high school, or maybe even junior high, early high school, you kind of went through a stage where you were very tall, you were very thin, and maybe you kind of got made fun of a little bit. But then your mom kind of helped you reframe that and let you know that you're beautiful. And it really helped with your self-esteem.
Yes. So growing up in this little town in Pennsylvania, I was born in Detroit, Michigan, And then I moved to Philadelphia for some time. And then my family, me, my mother, and my siblings, we wound up in a little town in Bucks County. So, this town was just like kind of brutal. Kids are cruel sometimes. And I was teased so bad. I was just like this awkward teen. And that is why I relate so much to the youth, because I understand what shoes they're walking in. When you get past like age 10 and 11 and 12, you feel ugly. You feel like, oh, I don't like these clothes my mom's giving me. I used to take off my coat and ditch it and be like, I'm putting on my little short jacket. My mom used to be like, cover yourself up. You need a coat to put a hood on, and you got to make sure it covers your behind. So that's how my mom raised me. Like, these short coats don't keep you warm. So, I was a kid that grew up like that, and I was a bully kid because I wore glasses, and I have had a whole life complex about wearing glasses. I always hated them. Like, I was just like, oh no, this is awful. Like, no, my glasses were really thick. I was teased so bad. Like, I felt like the kid that sat in the back of the bus or the front of the bus, because everybody made fun of me. I was skinny. Wow. I was like 90 pounds. I was just an awkward person. I wasn't comfortable with my skin. And I didn't really get comfortable with my skin until high school. And that was when everything changed.
Amen. At that time, it sounds like you went to New York City and you were a model for some time. So, it's funny because you were teased for being tall and skinny, and that's the look people want, right?
Yes.
and that launched your modeling career.
So, like, I was a kid in high school, and a woman scout came to the school, and people were telling me that, the modeling scout was coming, and everyone always knew that I wanted to be a model, but I just did not think I looked good enough. I didn't understand what they looked for. Until this woman looked at me and said, "You're beautiful. You have a beautiful complexion. You don't have acne on your skin. You have long fingers, long arms, long legs. You have a long neck. These are things that we look for in modeling." And so I'm just like, oh, whatever. But I wound up being scouted by this model scout at my high school. And after that, when I graduated, I wound up becoming a major model in New York City, and walking in fashion shows at the Jacob Javits Convention Center. I'm doing car shows, like coming out with the sign saying, looking really pretty. Like, I was doing stuff like that. And then I got some print jobs modeling on magazine covers for all these different magazines, Jive Magazine, True Expressions, True Stories, all these magazines under the same umbrella. So after that, I think my head kind of blew up a little bit. And I was like, you know what, Kay, really? Okay, Kay, you're really cute after all.
Amen. Well,
so I changed my tone.
Amen. God made you beautiful. I love that.
Thank you.
So you talked about your modeling career, and then you became a teacher, and you were very good at leadership. You had all these amazing skills. You liked to look nice. You liked your apartment to look nice. You really had the world by the tail at that time. And you said in the book, I lived my life like it was golden.
Yes.
And then something happened to you. It was just an accident. And you mentioned, going to the clubs and things like that earlier. And yet you had no interest in drugs. I mean, you probably saw a lot of people using recreational drugs around you at that time.
Right.
But that's not something that ever tempted you. Is that correct?
Listen, when I got to that chapter in my book, when I said I was living my life like it's golden, it's a song by Jill Scott. And I used to be a DJ, so I love music. So I kind of related to my life, like I was living my life like it's golden, living my life like it's golden. Okay. And that's the name of the song. That's the hook. It's like living my life like it's golden. And she's talking about living her life and being comfortable in her skin, and all of that stuff really matters to women. Being a woman, not just a woman of color. So who would ever think that someone like me would get into an accident and fall, and life would spiral out of control within a matter of months? So, I was a woman that I had skated through all of my teen years, never, ever having a desire to use drugs. I never smoked a cigarette. I never smoked a joint. I never drank. I was just like the life of the party. I was a chick that was like, hey, and I was a designated driver. I was always the one that my girlfriends wanted to go out and drink. I was the one that would be driving everybody home safely and dropping everybody off.
Right.
So, I never thought that I would be a person at the traffic light, nodded out, trying to get home from a club myself because of being addicted to opioids and not even knowing, not even having any knowledge of none of this. It was like walking through a tunnel in the dark with a blindfold and not being able to have someone say, even with the blindfold, hey, go that way. No. Don't hit that rock. You're gonna walk into a tree. I was just winging it on my own. But I was a person that had a great life, a great upbringing. I've always been strong-minded. I've always had leadership skills. And I was someone that started taking opioids after a knee surgery, and it changed my life forever. That's why it's so important for me to keep pushing this message, because I know so many people getting surgeries and injuries, and their kids are athletes.
Right.
One of my main target audiences is college students.
Yes.
Athletes, cheerleaders, football players. I just want people to know that one fall off the shoulders and you land on the ground and you break your neck, the first thing the doctor's going to say is, here's a prescription for some hydrocodone or some Percocets for your mom. Here you go. They're not going to explain everything to you.
Absolutely. So you fell down some stairs, you slipped on some leaves, and you injured your knee, and you were just walking into work. Everything was going well, and your life changed that quickly. But like you said, you didn't realize that the medicines they were giving you were addictive. And so what year did your accident happen, Chekesha?
So my accident happened in 2001, like the end of 2000.
Okay.
It happened in October of 2000.
Okay. So at that time, I think there's more of an awareness now. I think, like you said, there needs to be much more awareness. And I'm so thankful that you're putting this message out there, because people don't realize that an opioid, whether it's in a pill and a prescription or whether it's heroin, it's basically the same thing. One is just a street drug and one is socially acceptable.
Yes.
But it's the same thing.
The same thing. They're derived from the same type of thing, the poppy seed.
So here you are. Yeah, you never even smoked a joint. You were anti-drugs, but yet you became
never did anything in my whole life.
That's what's so heartbreaking to me, Chekesha, because you were not seeking to get high. You were not seeking to get addicted or in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
But you did what a lot of people do. You take the prescription from the doctor because you trust the doctor, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I took this prescription from this doctor, and at the time of my accident, I wound up suing. I had to sue the company where I fell at, because I was trying to sue the school that was connected to the gym of the school that my kids were in, my clients at the time. And when I fell, it was just like my lawyer reached out to me and said, well, I was just in the dark with this whole process. I never had a lawsuit. I never hired a lawyer for anything. I never, ever had to deal with any of this stuff. So it was like, okay, what do I do? I have no direction. But the lawyer was like, okay, so we're going to have to sue your company because the school is not assuming liability for that church that you fell down them steps of. So I'm like, what? I didn't want them to sue my company because they was a good company. They made sure I was okay. They weren't the enemy. So I didn't know. But also what I didn't know was that the lawyers worked close with the doctors, and that the doctor that I got was referred to me by my attorney, because they were all in cahoots. They worked together. Wow. So like all these things I didn't know till after the fact. So I was just like, okay, I thought my life was great. They were paying for my treatment. And you said, it took me a year to get my surgery. It was a whole year later, because basically I was going to therapy appointments, doctor's appointments. They were trying to get this and that approved and different things. And it was a process. So I was just like, okay, Then they tell me one day you have to get surgery. So I'm like, really? Surgery? Like, I just thought that I was going to get the treatment and then go back to work.
Right.
They were like, you have to get surgery for a meniscus tear. So I was really like kind of spooked about that. I was like, I've never had surgery before, but I put my faith up. I put my faith up, and I said, okay, if this will allow me to walk better and go back to work, I'm okay with that.
Right.
And so, I was okay. I got the surgery a year after the accident, and when the doctor handed me that prescription, Miss Ellen, take one every 4 to 6 hours. I said, okay. And this is me, not naive me. This is a lot of people are going to go through this. They're going to get a prescription. They're going to say, okay, one every 4 to 6 hours. Okay. They're going to take them as directed and as prescribed. But for me, and I'm not saying for every person, that my addiction, I think personally stemmed from my family history of drug addiction that I didn't know about. So
Wow.
I have direct relatives in my family that struggle with addiction that, made me more susceptible to loving Lorcet hydrocodone. But I know this is not every person's story though.
Right. And some people can take it for a few days and then they're done and they go on with life. But like you said, because of some history in your family that you were naive about,
yep,
you had a tendency to get addicted to that.
Yep.
Wow. You mentioned in your book, Chekesha, that your days were consumed with doctor visits, physical therapy, visits with your attorney, and pills.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. My life became so consumed. It was just like, it was like a haze. It was just like, okay. And I kept track of all of my stuff in calendars. So I would be like, okay, today is such and such a date. I have for this first week of whatever year or whatever time, I have to see 4 doctors to get $120 Lorcet hydrocodone from each doctor. Like that is over the years. I would say within 4 to 5 years of my addiction, I was crazy. I wasn't me. I wasn't me at all. And I was withdrawal from family functions, family, friends. I was still partying a little bit on a recreational side, but most of my days were spent, okay, I have to see the doctor at this time. I got to go to therapy on this day, and then I got to go see this doctor for this day. I had 2 doctors that originally started prescribing me the Lorcet, and that was the surgeon that did my surgery and the orthopedic doctor that he referred me to for outpatient treatment for the recovery after the surgery. So both of those doctors were giving me hydrocodone, and neither one of them knew that they were still giving it to me. I think maybe like the 6 months passed, and I was, I didn't realize what I was going through. So I was just like, okay, I like these pills, so I want to keep more on hand. I just want to have more. So I was like, okay, I wasn't telling Dr. C that Dr. D was still writing these prescriptions. And I was seeing both doctors and I was getting the same prescription. So I didn't realize that at that point, my addiction it had started.
Sure.
My addiction was born at that time when I was like finding ways to keep more at hand.
Exactly. So you mentioned that you were kind of withdrawing from friends and family, Chekesha. Why were you doing that? Were you trying to hide things from them, or what was the reasoning behind isolating yourself at that time?
So, I was realizing things about my addiction that, and I'm gonna say this every 5 minutes. I was in a tunnel walking through the dark, blindfolded. So there was nobody to say, hey, what are you doing? No, I didn't have no one telling me every step, every different withdrawal symptom, what I was dealing with. So I was just like, okay, I feel sick today. I feel like I want to throw up. I have diarrhea. My hands are sweaty. I'm just going through all this anxiety and paranoia.
Right.
And so I started withdrawing from the physical stuff first. Like the physical symptoms made me, when you're sick, you don't want to be around people. That's normal.
Right.
You know what I mean? So for me, I was just like, I don't feel like being around people, And so I didn't realize I don't even remember. So at what point where I realized that I was going through withdrawals, that I was getting sick because I didn't have the medicine.
Right.
So I was just like, I felt sick, and I was like, okay. Then when I got my refill, everything was good again. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, I felt motivated. I could get up, I could eat. Because, when you're going through withdrawals, you don't want to eat. You're throwing up, you don't want to eat food.
Okay.
And you don't want to do nothing but just lay down and curl up in a ball. It's like the withdrawals is hellfire, period. And I didn't know what I was going through. So, that's why I withdraw from my family, because I felt like I didn't want them to be like, oh, she's sick, so why does she want to be around at that time,
Right.
or whatever. So I didn't want to be around people, and that was why, because I was going through withdrawal, but I still didn't put two and two together.
Sure. At what point do you feel like you knew you had a problem? Because this addiction lasted for 9 years. Uh, when did you kind of think, something is not right here?
And
Because
I
I think
always
you can live in denial for sure.
I was in denial for a while. Like I kept
Mm.
thinking, like I went through a phase where I had access to the pills, but I wanted to give them to people so that they can be happy with me. That's what teenagers do. If they try a drug, they'll be like, hey, you want to try this? It's awesome. Like I got through my term papers, I got through my homework, I did my chores, and I still went and partied all night and came back home. So I was going through that at 27. I was just like, hey, you want to try these?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I got to a point where I didn't want to share them no more. And that's when I knew I had a problem. When I wanted to keep them all for myself, I realized that, this is something going on. Like, okay, no one ever said to me, these pills, if you take more than what is prescribed, that you can become addicted. And if you take this many, you could die from the toxicity of that drug. You can overdose if you go through a period of time without it, and then you go back to it. But I
Wow.
had no one tell me none of this stuff. But I knew maybe after 3 years, it took me 3 years almost of denial to say, okay, you got to keep enough of these pills on hand so you're not throwing up in the morning. So that's when I knew it was a problem. I knew it when I was physically sick and curled up in a ball and not able to keep no food down and shaking and cold one minute and hot the next. It was like having a flu times 1,000. That's what the withdrawals felt like.
Wow.
Yep. It was
So,
crazy.
Chekesha, you mentioned that you were raised in a Christian home, so you were a person of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your relationship with God like at this time when you kind of realized there's a problem? Were you kind of keeping God at arm's length? Were you crying out to him? What did that look like for you?
So, as I said before, I'm a preacher's kid. I grew up in the church, so I always knew where my faith sat. And I always know how to pray when there's something going on that I can't help myself get through. I
Amen.
always know that Jesus Christ is a higher being, and that he can fix anything.
Amen.
Anything. Like things that are impossible, he makes it
Yeah.
possible.
Amen.
So
Preach it, girl.
yes. So growing up in my religion, I always had a praying mom, a praying dad. People prayed around me. I know how to pray. I know how to get on my hands and knees and
Yeah.
call out and be like, I can't do this anymore. So, throughout my addiction, I always prayed. I mean, the time that I would pray is that I would lay down at night in my bed and I would just like pray when nobody knew what I was doing. And I would close my eyes and say, God, please give me my life back. Please. I just want to get up and eat a bowl of oatmeal and have a cup of tea and go to work. I don't want to have to fight this fight no more. And I prayed this prayer so many times, but it just wasn't happening for me at the time. So, as time went on, I realized that there's a reason and a season for everything.
Amen.
God put you through everything is allotted a lot of times. Like, okay, this is meant to happen at this time because God knows our endings before our beginnings.
Yes.
So I knew that even throughout my addiction, I was sinning, I was borrowing money from people, never paying them back. I was doing lots of crazy things, but I always kept my faith. And I always said in the back of my mind, like I was telling my boyfriend today, I said, there was a time where I would just sit back and be like, I forgot how it felt to be normal. I
Mm.
forgot how it felt to wake up and do normal stuff. To use the bathroom, I was constipated for 6 months because of the opioids. They had my whole body messed up. I wasn't yawning, sneezing, or stretching because opioids suppress your immune system. Everything in your body, they're suppressed. So I was
Mm.
telling my boyfriend today that I woke up and I was just like, oh, this is so beautiful. It's
Mm.
nothing going on right now. And I just love that feeling. I
Amen.
love feeling like just everything is just basic. Like
Peaceful. Yes.
God's grace and mercy is real. I'm telling you, it really is. And throughout my whole addiction, I knew that there was purpose for this. Everything I went through was
Mm.
purpose for that. That
Yes.
you're going through this for somebody else. It's not meant for you, Kate. It's not. It's not meant for you.
Praise God. That
Yes.
is extremely powerful when you consider what you're doing now. So
Yes.
God's timing is critical. And
Yes.
we also have to get to that place where we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And as long as we're kind of loving our sin a little bit and enjoying it, we're gonna stick with it. But when we get to that place where we hit rock bottom, which is incredibly painful and awful, but it's necessary in the process because then
Yes.
we're really ready to surrender to God and let Him take control.
Can I tell you something
Absolutely.
that I think is very powerful? That
Yes.
what I tell people all the time, that every person's rock bottom is different. We can't
Mm,
look at this person and say, well, I went through this at this time, so I surrendered at that point in my life. But for
right.
that person's rock bottom, it might be something else further than
Yeah.
that road. So we can't look at someone's rock bottom and think it's our rock bottom because everybody is different. And also the aha moment, you only get that 1 second to make that choice. That's why it's
Mm,
called an aha moment, because it's like you ever just sit in your car and you're at the light and you get a thought in your brain, you're like, oh, why didn't I think of this before? That's what an aha moment is. It's a moment
yes.
where you get a moment to think about something that is life altering. And at that moment, you have to say in your head, I'm ready. I've surrendered. I'm done. I
Yes.
surrendered. I surrendered. When I had my aha moment, I, I, I put my hands up. I looked up through my sunroof and said, Father God, deliver me from this because I know I can't do this.
Mm,
This is beyond man. This is
yes.
not a manly situation. Man can't deliver you from what I went through without no detox, no 12-step programs, no sponsors, and no
Mm,
Suboxone, none of that stuff. So,
amen.
I realized that you have to surrender and you have to realize that it's out of your hands. You can't do it by yourself. You can't do
Amen.
it alone. Can't.
Wow. That if I don't know, you'd like drop three mics on that. But you are a DJ, so you're good at it, girl. I love that. Well, one, you said everybody's rock bottom looks different.
Yes.
That's so true because we look at people and we're like, wow, aren't you there yet? But yet you pick up a shovel and you keep digging. But they're in a process with God. I was in a process with God. You were in a process with God, and that
Yes.
looks different for everybody. And that's incredibly true and powerful. And I love that you said that.
Yes.
But when you had your aha moment, Chekesha, what did that look like? How did the light bulb come on and God answered that prayer? You were crying out every night to Him, but you were like done. What was that for you?
So, Michele, as we bonded and connected, I'm going to talk about how we connected from our aha moments.
Yeah.
But I was sitting in my car, and my back was up against the wall. I knew that after trying to get this forged prescription filled, and they called the cops on me. I
Mm,
walked out the pharmacy, but it was meant for me. God was leading me through this whole thing. Like you could look at it and be like, "Oh, you're a nobody, and you're a criminal. You're forging prescriptions. You're doing bad things." But if
mm.
God has a plan for you, He's going
Yeah.
to make every step that you do a part of that process.
Yes.
So that last and final prescription, I went into a giant pharmacy in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, and the pharmacist was like, "We can't fill this," but they had my prescription in the back for too long. And every time I got that feeling, I would get nervous and walk out. So God was just telling me, keep going. Everything you're dealing with is part of the process.
Yes.
So As I walked out that giant pharmacy that day, I got in my truck and I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I was like, I had lost all my doctors at one time. Someone sent out an email from a Target pharmacy to all of my doctors, all everywhere. And they were like, she's getting all these prescriptions from different doctors. It's the same medication. So, when the pharmacist pulled out this paper, it was like a scroll. So I was like, what is this? And I saw my name and all these pharmacies and dates and 120 Dorset, 120 Dorset, 90 Dorset, 60 Dorset. So I was just like, so when I walked out that pharmacy, I knew that I had two choices at that moment, at the aha moment. My two choices were one, death. I was going to die. I was going to die. My second choice was I was going to do fed time and cold turkey in jail. And that is not fun because I have talked to a lot of people that have been thrown in jail for addiction.
Right.
When they could have gotten help for that, the proper recovery treatment for that. But they didn't get that. They threw them in jail because they thought they were a criminal. Right. And so I realized that I was going to jail or I was going to die. So I sat down in my car and at that moment I said, I got to pull myself up by my bootstraps and I have to make a choice. I have to make a choice. I wasn't a mother. I didn't have no children. It was just me. And, my family didn't realize everything I was going through. But I knew at that moment that if I did not get off the opioids, whether it was however, I was going to die from an overdose or I was going to jail. And I was going to do 10 years federal time for forging prescriptions. I knew that was going to happen. So I made a choice and I stuck with it. I mean, like I said, we don't know what a person's rock bottom looks like because we're not in that person's spirit. We're not in their soul. We're not in that fight. We're not in that battle. We don't know. We don't know what someone's rock bottom looks like. You might get hit by a car and lose 2 legs and still be on opioids. And people will be like, really? I never judge people. I learned not to judge people because everybody's different.
Yes.
Every story is different.
That's so good. We can't judge people. We don't know the backstory and we don't know how those roots got planted in their lives at all.
Right.
So you were looking at 2 choices. 1, die, or 2, detox in jail for, 10 years. And none of those options really looked that appealing.
I was looking at fed time. I was looking at federal time.
Wow. And here you are. I mean, just the picture that you painted, Chekesha, of your early life. You were so responsible. You had it together. You believed in God. You had this beautiful life. And it's just so amazing how quickly that all changed. But yet your story is the story of so many people. They fall, get hurt. They're in an accident. They take the medicine. They trust the doctor. They get addicted and their life absolutely falls apart. It's happening too many times. And I think like I said, there's more awareness now, but I love that you're bringing your story to light because so many people are in the same situation and they're probably embarrassed. They're probably ashamed of, feeling like a junkie, but yet having no intentions to get addicted or even to use drugs. They don't even understand what's happening.
I just want to talk about the fact that I'm an ambassador for a global organization called Shatterproof.
Okay.
And I've been an ambassador for them for like a year now. I've done different challenges with them and things like that. But it wasn't until I recovered 4 years after I recovered. So I got clean in 2010. But in 2014, I basically was like using words like I'm an addict. I'm a recovering addict. And, people call me a pillhead, a junkie, all these different things. And it wasn't until being an ambassador for Shatterproof and also becoming a certified family recovery specialist that I realized that when you use those terminologies, the stigmas, it really creates a barrier for people to get treatment and get through this whole thing with addiction. Like, I'm still learning everything, but what I do know is this. I don't want to change anyone's narrative about what their language is. Your narrative and language is what you choose. But for me, I realized that somebody like me struggled with addiction for 9 years because I didn't want to get the help because I'm thinking people want to call me an addict or I'm an addict or a pillhead. So I didn't want to be associated with those names, with those stigmas. And I realized that it's traumatizing for people that are going through something and they don't want nobody to know. And they're like, okay, I want to get help for this. But how do I do this? People will think I'm an addict or a junkie or pill head or a
Right.
dope fiend. Like changing up the narrative and the language can change the whole game of addiction and recovery.
That's
And
so
that is just my terminology about that.
I agree with you 100%. And how we label ourselves is critical in how we see ourselves. And so you and I both know that we're daughters of God. We're
Yes.
daughters of the
I'm a
Most
child
High,
of God.
right? And so our
Yes.
past doesn't define us. The labels of the world don't define us. So I love that because I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yes.
How we see ourselves is how we will act. And if we in our heart believe to be an addict and yet we're trying not to use it, it makes us double-minded. But I don't want to get too far in that, but I hear what you're saying.
Right.
And I agree with you. And I love that you're an ambassador for that. That's beautiful.
Yes.
So let's
That's one of mine.
back up a bit. You have your aha moment. You forged a prescription. You're looking at a couple of very dark options, either death or prison.
Mhm.
And yet God had like, let's look at door number 3,
Yes.
going into healing. And at that point, you went to your parents. Now, did you tell them what was going on, or did they already kind of have an idea that something was wrong?
So my parents, they're old school. And so my mom and them, they know about all the regular drugs. They know about what people go through when they're on heroin or alcohol or different things like that. But I think with opioids, because it's something that you put in your mouth and you swallow with water, and then you start acting different ways, people don't understand that it's the same type of drug as heroin is.
Mm-hmm.
And so my parents did not understand what I was going through, but they knew I was going through some type of addiction. Like my parents, they were giving me money to support my habit. They were giving me money to go to doctor's appointments, but they didn't know really the depth of it. They didn't know I was taking 35 pills a day.
Wow.
They didn't know that it got so bad that if I went a certain amount of hours without a certain amount of pills, I would start going through withdrawal. And that was because of my body's tolerance. But they didn't understand all of that stuff. But I know that my dad, he's a man of God. Discernement is that gift.
Yeah.
And my dad was just like highly spiritual and anointed. So my dad knew I was going through something, but he used to be like, baby doll, when you're ready to get through this, we'll be here for you. But me and my mom, they didn't understand the depths of what I went through till I got clean and called them that day on the phone. So I texted them because I couldn't hear.
So let's talk a little bit about that. I didn't know if you wanted to mention it or not, Chekesha, but you lost your hearing through your 9 years of opioid addiction.
Yep.
So you're basically deaf. Is that correct?
I'm fully deaf. Yes, I'm fully deaf. And
Wow.
I lost my hearing in 2009. And I lost my hearing in a very short period of time. So, like I said, I'm in this dark tunnel for 9 years. And I'm on a hiking trip. And I can't see, I'm blindfolded. And I don't know. Nothing's going on. I'm just walking in that path, and I'm just like figuring out things as I go along. So a doctor told me that you're going deaf from the hydrocodone. So I was like, what do you mean?
Wow.
So the doctor told me that, and this is how this appointment went. I sat in this doctor's office, and she was writing chart notes and telling me that, Ms. Ellis, I cannot prescribe you any more opioids, because I couldn't hear, so he was writing. I can't prescribe you any more opioids. You're going deaf because of the hydrocodone, the toxicity of it, taking too many, taking too much. So I was like, what do you mean I need my pills a day? And it was just like,
wow.
Like I felt lost at that point. But this doctor, she saved my life. This doctor saved my life because she was the only doctor that really took the time to realize what I was going through and the hearing loss and associating it with the opioids. So at that point, I just was like, wow, I lost my hearing in like 8 months. It was just like muffling, and then it was like ringing, and then it was just like getting quieter and quieter and quieter.
Wow.
And so I was just like, so I went to an audiologist in Burlington, New Jersey, an older audiologist at the time that I went to him. And he was doing all these hearing tests on me at the beginning of my hearing loss. So he's the person that held the key to tell me really what was happening, but he couldn't because he was an older audiologist. He was very old. And so he kept testing me. He kept saying, Miss Ellis, I'm trying to figure this out. Every time you come back here to the office, your test is getting lower and lower. It's like you're gradually going deaf. I'm like, what? What do you mean? Like, I never thought in a million years I would be fully deaf. I never saw that coming. And this audiologist kind of opened the door. He peeked it open and said, so this is what's happening. You're going deaf. And I don't know why. Are you taking any drugs, any medications I should know about? Like, I don't know. And at the time I was going deaf, I was still using. So, you know, I remember him writing me a prescription to get hearing aids. And me being a model, former model, I felt like, really? Like, I'm not wearing no hearing aids, okay? Like, I'm a model. That's there for old people. I'm not walking around with these big hooks on my ear. I'm not doing that. But I got to a point where I couldn't, like, the muffling was everything was getting quieter and quieter and quieter. And I was just like, I became desperate to want to hear what people had to say. I was tired of writing notes, and I was just trained, and I was tired of people discriminating, saying, well, you talk normal, but you don't look deaf. How do you look deaf? Really? I was really going through something mentally with this whole thing. I was going through a lot mentally, but one day I woke up on my couch. I was living in Delaware, and I had the hearing aids, and I woke up and I was like, I woke up, I was like, nobody home. Okay. So I got up, I dropped my phone, and I couldn't even hear it. So I was like, okay, it was weird. So I got up, started trying to bang stuff to make noise. I couldn't hear nothing. And that was the day I realized I had totally lost my hearing. I couldn't hear nothing at all. So I was just like, the most courageous thing I will say about this part of my journey is that when I got diagnosed being deaf in 2009, guess what? I'm a woman that I don't stop. I don't stop. I have the gift of push, the gift of drive. I kept driving my car. I never stopped driving the whole time I was deaf. Like, I would get in my car. I got to go here. I was still chasing doctor's appointments and pharmacies the whole time I was deaf. In my car, driving. All right. I couldn't hear nothing, but I was just like, okay, I can see. Okay. Turn signals. I can see all that stuff. I can see the lights. I just couldn't hear nothing. If somebody was beeping the horn, beep, beep, I couldn't hear that. But I kept pushing, even though I lost my hearing. Kept pushing.
So earlier, Chekesha, we talked about how everybody's rock bottom looks different.
Right.
And from an outsider looking in, I might think, wow, you've lost your hearing through using opioids. Aren't you done yet? But again, rock bottom looks different. And so you were still in the process.
Yes.
And when you were kind of facing those two options we talked about earlier. But you mentioned your parents and how supportive they were. And I love what you wrote about your dad. And you mentioned it earlier. But he said, baby doll, you can do this. You have to forgive yourself and put your faith up and just leave it in God's hands. And I love that. That's so beautiful. And then you detoxed with your mom. And you said you basically went cold turkey. You didn't have any 12-step, no treatment center, no drugs to kind of take the edge off. And you mentioned in your book that you don't recommend doing that. You don't recommend people going cold turkey. Why not?
I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a doctor. But what I will say is this. What I did was part of my journey, and it was part of my calling. And also, I want to mention this. When I got off the opioids, I was deaf. And I tried to go to 12-step meetings. They didn't have no accommodations for the hearing impaired.
Right.
So that was a big part of why I was cold turkey, because people didn't understand that I was talking normal when I was fully deaf. Like, people just looked at me like, thinking that you had to be mute to be deaf. So I felt like I was by myself. And I when I got clean, cold turkey, I tell people all the time, I know about 20 people in the past year from different places that have overdosed, and I'm going to tell you why. They overdosed because they were taking an amount of a drug that their body was immune to. And then what happened was they went through a period of abstinence without it. Whether that abstinence meant they dealer left the town or got locked up,
Right.
whether something happened where they didn't have the drug, or the pharmacy didn't fill the refill. Whatever happened, they didn't have access to that drug for a matter of time. And they went through some withdrawal. When you start going through that withdrawal and then you go back to the amount that you were taking, that is how people have fatal outcomes from that. And that's from knowing, from what people have told me. It's not from a medical standpoint or a doctor standpoint, but I know that a lot of people think they can cold turkey, but it's just not recommended. It's a dangerous thing to do. It's not safe.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. And as we're mentioning, everybody's rock bottom looks different and everybody's recovery journey looks different. So this is what you chose to do. Other people have had success in rehab. Other people have done 12 steps. God knows we're not all the same, and God knows what we need. So if we follow his lead, we'll always reach our destination. That's so important to understand.
Yes. And that I support all pathways to recovery, many pathways. I don't look at people and say, well, this person followed a 12-step regimen, so I'm looking at them this way, or this person did a holistic pathway, or this person just did what I did. Like, I know that people have discriminated against me because they have said, we don't want you to come in and speak to our organization because you didn't follow a 12-step program. I have been, like, I'm talking, like, I've been in recovery for 10 years and I've spoken at over 20 schools all over different states. I've spoken for many different organizations, but I have had people look at me and say, we're not going to have you because of a 12-step, you didn't follow a 12-step regimen. I had people turn me down because of that. And I would never do that, because I know that there are people out here all over the world fighting for pathway. They don't know their pathway. They might be like, okay, do I need God? They might not never saw God in their life. They might never know, they don't know who Jesus Christ is. They might say, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know how to find it. And maybe if you give them some spiritual direction, they might say, Jesus Christ is my higher being. We don't know. We can't enforce our different pathways on other people. And I would never do that. I learned that.
Respect the journey. That's so good.
Yep.
Love it. So, Chekesha, you were on your mom's couch, basically, just having the withdrawals, feeling awful. But after maybe 3 or 4 weeks, you started to feel normal again. And I know what you said earlier about just wanting to feel normal and just appreciating a normal, peaceful day.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about how you started to feel like yourself again and how you pushed through, because you push through it, right? And I think a lot of people who want to get clean or break free from whatever chain that has them bound. And so we know that there can be a multitude of chains.
Right.
I believe there's one chain breaker, God, Jesus, he's a chain breaker. But whatever the chain is, whatever you're trying to break free from, whether it's a toxic relationship or anxiety or whatever. Okay. So, you were starting to feel better, but you had to push through that feeling bad part. And I think what a lot of people do is, as soon as they start feeling sick, like, oh, I'm throwing up, or I have diarrhea, or my boyfriend, I really miss him, or whatever the case may be. Like, as soon as you start feeling bad, you can't push through and you go back to that chain.
Right.
If you can push through, if you can get through that tough spot,
yes,
then life starts to be a little bit normal. And you said my vision was returning, so you were able to see more clearly, probably physically with your eyes, but also spiritually. That fog was lifting, right? So talk to us a little bit about that.
So when I went through my the withdrawal, it took me a long time. I'm not going to hold people up and say, well, I've been a detox once. I went to a detox 1 year before I got clean, and it was hell. And
Mm.
it were people in there saying after 3 or 4 days they were up eating, going smoking cigarettes outside, going to sitting in meetings and things like that. I wasn't able to do that because I had a high tolerance for the amount of pills I was taking for that amount of time.
Right.
So it took me a long time to get my body right. Like my vision was clouded.
Mm.
Um, I had lost my libido for like 6 months, and I wasn't pregnant. It was just a lot of different things with my body. Like I wasn't sneezing. I wasn't doing normal physical things. So
Mm-hmm.
once I got off of that and went through the withdrawal, I think I sneezed 1,000 times. Because I know a lot of people say when they go through withdrawal from heroin
Mm-hmm.
and painkillers, they sneeze excessively. It's like achoo, achoo, achoo. All them suppressed sneezes are packed up and they all coming out. It's like everything in your body, everything just like comes back. And so I was
Wow.
kind of like, my vision was blurry. I was looking out the window like I didn't know what day of the week it was. I was lethargic. I was highly lethargic. Like I never felt lethargy like this in my life. It
Mm.
was like looking outside and being like, what month is it? What
Mm.
day is it? Is it? I know it's daytime. I didn't know anything about the days of the weeks or how I felt about that. I was lethargic.
Mm.
I had massive restless leg and arm syndrome. I would say that was the worst part of getting cold turkey. The rest is, I mean, my limbs were like this. They just kept moving, and they
Mm.
just kept moving. They wouldn't stop. They wouldn't stop moving. My legs kept pushing, and I was running up and down steps for 12 hours. My mom was like, my mom is my hero because
Mm.
my mom saw me suffering and was like, I'm gonna convert back to an analogy that a parent and a mother can relate to with this. It's
Yes.
like having a sick baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your baby is crying, and you don't know how to make the baby better. You just want to
Right.
take that burden and say, I'll have the colic and the vomiting and the gas. And I'll have the earache and I'll have all that stuff. I just want my baby to feel better. I want to take that pain. That's where my mom was. My
Aw.
mom, she wanted to take my pain, but it
Mm.
was like she was trying to help me. She said, baby, down. My mom kept running me Epsom salt baths
Mm.
and telling me to sit down in the tub for as long as I could and trying to relax my limbs. My
Mm.
mom was like, okay. When I realized I couldn't sit in the tub, she was like, okay, take a hot shower. And then my mom started feeding me, like, because I couldn't keep no food down. So I was just like, I don't have a taste for nothing. My taste buds was lost. It was just awful. Like, I'm telling you, like, I don't recommend cold turkey for nobody, especially when you're on a high level of a drug for a long time.
Right.
Never, ever, ever cold turkey. But
Mm.
me and my mom, we walked through it, and
Yeah.
my mom was giving me little cups of Gatorade G3. They don't even make it now. It's probably got a different name to it, but
Mm-hmm.
she give me cups of Gatorade and saying, drink, keep drinking, keep drinking. It's going to your electrolytes is low because you're throwing up and you have diarrhea, and that's going to make you feel worse. So I kept drinking that and drinking that, and every day I was just like taking baths, trying to watch TV. I couldn't hear, but I had the closed caption on my TV.
Wow.
And I'm going to also go back to Michele, our connection. I
Yes.
want to go back to that. I want
Yeah.
to go back. Remind me to go back to that. But
Okay.
I went through hell with that process, and it took me about. I didn't drive my car for 3 weeks, almost a month.
Mm.
I could not drive. I couldn't go to the store and get groceries. I couldn't drive nowhere. I couldn't do nothing. And one day, my mom, she was like, you know what? My mom is got a southern background to her, so and my mom can cook. She taught me how to cook at a young age. So my mom said, all right, I'm going to make you something and you're going to eat it. And my mom's biggest pet peeve is this. If I put food on your plate, you going to eat all of it. You're not throwing none of my food away. You know, moms be like,
Yeah.
you're not wasting my food. So
Yep.
she made me a little bowl of white rice and northern beans. Northern beans is a comfort food.
Yes.
It's like a delicious bean that you make with smoked turkey and
Mm.
like a little gravy with it. She put it on the rice and she was like, eat this little cup. And if you keep that down, you be winning. So she made me this little cup of northern beans and white rice. and I ate it, and I was like, oh, that was the first meal I kept down. And after
Wow.
that, my appetite kicked back in. I mean, it's a process with this stuff. Like, you
Right.
can't just think that you're going to throw up for a week and then eat the next day. It don't work like that.
Right.
Your body is drained. It takes a lot to go through that. And
Yeah.
so once I was able to eat again, my mom was like, okay. So once I was able to eat again, my mom was like, okay, I'm going home. I was like, okay, mom, I'm good. I was able, my restless leg syndrome and arm syndrome had started to subside. And I felt like, okay, I'm all right. Like, I would go in the bathroom and look at myself in the mirror and I'd be like,
Mm.
not throwing up.
Amen.
I'm eight.
Mm.
I'm okay. I was so happy, right?
Wow.
That I got off the opioids. That the fact that I was deaf, I wasn't even focusing on that. I
Amazing.
wasn't even focusing on the fact that I had lost my hearing. I was so happy I was off those opioids. The physical part was enough for me.
Mm.
It was crazy.
Wow. That is crazy. Well,
Yep.
let's talk about how we are connected. So, I found you. I was looking up something on Amazon about my book, and then I saw that your book was a #1 new release in a particular area, and I was like, "Woo, yay!" And so I clicked on it. I went to your website, and I saw Psalm 23. I'm like, "Okay, she's a believer. I'm reaching out to her." And then I read your book, and you mentioned that you got saved through the 700 Club, or you rededicated your life to Jesus through the 700 Club, and I got saved through the 700 Club in 1995. And then you also said that your end date was August 8th. So that's 8/8, and 8 is a number for new beginnings.
Yes.
And so it just, there were so many things. You bought a Michele watch and it's spelled like my name, and just so many things. I'm like, okay, God, this is a divine appointment. And I just love
Yes.
that, because I don't know, we just clicked. And when we talked, it was like, okay, I can't wait to interview you and have you on the show. So it's been so awesome. And we're getting to the end of our time now, Chekesha, but I
Yes.
so enjoyed your book. You are just a light. And I'm just so excited for all God has for you, because with your training, and I know you're going into new training, and you're going to write a sequel to this book, which is going to go into more detail. And that's so exciting.
Yes.
And as we shared earlier, God says, he who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it. So he's began an incredible work in you, and it's just going to continue. And I just love that. But as we wrap up today, could you just speak to that person who is struggling like you once were? Maybe this person never used drugs, or just, never had an interest in drugs, but through a surgery, through an accident,
Right.
has become addicted to pain pills like you were. Speak to that person if you would, please.
So I just want to say this in my comfortable, humble voice, because I do believe that sometimes people are intimidating with your messages, and if they're too loud, it kind of makes people push back from hearing what they have to say. But I want you to understand something. If you are someone, or you have a loved one that is suffering with substance use disorder, not addiction, it's certain type of terminology that I use. We can say addiction, but not addict or pillhead or dope fiend. We want to change up the language and the narrative so that people can feel more comfortable with getting help for their problems. But if you have someone that is fighting this fight, please understand something. Don't give up on them. I don't care how many times they steal from you, how many times you have to support them, how many times they get locked up, how many times they don't pay the child support, how many times they don't lose a job, or lost a home, or sold their clothes, or lost their cars, or lost their jobs. It's so many different realms to addiction and the things you go through. It's like you get lost in a maze. It's like a maze, and you're just like, you hitting this in, you hitting this, you're like, oh my God. Never give up on your loved ones. Never do it. Never do it. Don't do it. Don't do it, because you have to look at me. I am here by God's grace and mercy, and that is it. There's no other way. There's no other person I can attribute to my recovery because I was in a life or death situation. And I know there's many people out here like, oh, my son, he overdosed. I don't care how many times your loved one overdosed. I don't care. There's still hope. There's always hope for that person. There's always hope. And there's ways to not support that habit, but support them and keep them in prayer. Keep that person in prayer, because when I went through my addiction, my dad, he was a member of the Churches of Christ Written in Heaven, which is an umbrella all over the South. He had the whole entire Churches of Christ Written in Heaven praying for Chekesha, K. Ellis. And all of those prayers kept me alive. All those prayers gave me strength to be where I am today. Don't give up on your loved ones. And if you ever need help with someone struggling with substance use disorder, reach out to me. I have connections statewide. My website is chasenomore.org. Chase, ChaseNomore. chasenomore.org. You can reach out to me at any time on my social media, Chekesha K. Ellis.
That was incredible. Thank you so much. Those were very wise and God-inspired words. Yeah. And I will definitely post the links for you guys to get her book. I highly recommend it. Go to her website. I'll put all of that up after the interview. But Chekesha, I am just so grateful to know you, and I consider you a friend. And I definitely want to keep in touch with all that you're doing. God bless you. I just love your story. And, you know, what I see in you right now is just a lot of diamonds. Yes. And I know where diamonds come from. They come from coal.
From the rough.
But God has turned those into diamonds, and now you're able to share those diamonds with other people. So thank you so much for being our guest today.
Michele. Thank you for having me so much. Thank you. God bless you. And our connection was we both found the 700 Club at Pat Robertson. That's what turned my road around.
Same here. Same here. All right. Thank you so much, and we'll see you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow. That was so powerful. I love her story. I've been wanting to have a guest on who had an addiction to prescription pills, and then God always provides guests for me. And I just love interviewing people like Chekesha and all the others for the Voices of Recovery, whether they were in my book or whether they're just on the show. So if you or somebody you know has an amazing story of how God helped you overcome a life-controlling issue, reach out to me. I would love to connect with you and see if being a guest would be a good fit. So I want to thank everybody for watching this episode of Voices of Recovery. We're creating a safe place where people can go on their journey with God. If you're new to the page, I'd love it if you'd give us a like or a follow so you don't miss anything here. And if you feel led, share this story out, because there may be somebody on your page who is struggling with a prescription addiction and you don't even know it. And I believe that Chekesha's story is so powerful, and somebody needs to hear what she had to say today. So I want to encourage everybody to get her book, and that is A Life of Kayos, her journey through hell, hope, and healing. That is now available on Amazon, and I will link that after the show. But again, I want to thank everybody for watching this episode of Voices of Recovery. God bless you, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.